Hey, welcome to the show, Leading and Growing Your Real Estate Business. This is Coach James Short, aka Shorty, and this is a show for those within the real estate industry wanting to lead and grow their real estate business. It's a series of interviews that we conduct for those within the industry. So we're finding out what those leaders are within the industry, what makes them tick, what's their story, what are their strategies, and how to become the leaders and the growers within the industry. But also, it's an interview series with those outside of the industry. I'm always a big believer of looking at a whole different part of the pie rather than just focusing on one part of the pie. Because what it does, it allows you to have a different perspective, allows you to get snippets or golden nuggets from those outside of the industry that can look into the industry and go, there's a different perspective. And so I encourage you to reach out to the guests. I encourage you to lean into these series to find out how can these pieces of information, experiences, stories help you lead and grow your real estate business. Welcome back to another show. It is exciting, ladies and gentlemen, to have this amazing guest back onto the show, Amanda Coombe. She's a 5 times Australian sports champion and world champion athlete, CEO, university lecturer, a newspaper columnist turned inspirational speaker and wellness expert. Oh, she knows the highs and the lows of being the founder. She's the founder of the Australian most awarded fitness business and Telstra Business Women of the Year. Using her gifts of teaching and serial optimism and positivity, she certainly is that. Oh my goodness. Amanda knows what it takes to overcome adversity and rise above the limiting beliefs of others to inspire people to change the way they look, feel, and function. So looking forward to having the wellness queen, Amanda Coombs, on the show. We're going to be talking about the difference between healthy eating, eating for sports, performance, and eating for weight loss, and also the importance of protein in our diet, particularly as we age. Yes, we're all aging, and it's linked to maintaining independence and mobility. The concept of active aging and the yo-yo diet syndrome. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. Amanda, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, James. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. So you're on a little while ago. Lots been happening in your world. You're moving into some keynote speaking, which is fantastic. That's why we wanted to get you back onto the show to find out what's been happening. What's been some exciting projects that you've been working on in the last, say, 6 to 12 months?
I've been doing a program with the Department of Justice in Tasmania.
Wow.
So we have a variety of model. They've got courts in 3 regions in Tasmania. So we run multiple things with them around wellness, one of which is a webinar series on 12 different topics about what it means to be healthy and well in the workplace. So that can be anything from bone density, which vitamins and supplements, how to overcome back pain, getting enough sleep, those kinds of things, together with some on-site Pilates
Oh, great.
and some health snapshots for their organisation. So everyone comes away with a little snapshot about where their health's at and some direction for whatever they'd like to pursue. That's quite a good icebreaker. 10 years ago, we would have been using the concept you're having a fitness assessment, which is really scary. So in this politically correct world, we use different language now.
So true, right? I get it. So true. Now, I'm really interested to talk about the difference between healthy eating because for those primarily, our audience is in the real estate space. It's high stress, it's high performance, it's you got to be on your game. And so often I hear, went through the drive-through, I've got this and a quick snack, and I've done that. There's a lot of health conscious people within the industry. However, a lot of it where I hear fall down, and particularly the importance part of the nutrition. So let's unpack that, the difference between healthy eating, eating for sports, performance, and eating for weight loss. I'll just hand the reins over to you and share your insights.
Thanks, James. Well, it's kind of like in the real estate industry, when people talk about real estate who don't know about real estate, they will often say, oh, it's all about sales and marketing. And they clump sales and marketing together.
Mm.
And we know that if you don't have good marketing, you can't have any sales. So it's very clear whether the chicken or the egg comes
Very
together.
true.
And that's exactly what happens with the way we fuel our body. So, people might see someone like Jess Fox being interviewed, and, they might ask her a question about how she fuels herself and what she has before a race or before a training. And she might be having this massive bowl of pasta. And people think, right, well, that's healthy eating. She's a world champion, multiple Olympic medal winner. That's what I need because I want to look like that and I want to perform like that. But, we're not all full-time athletes. We can't exercise at that intensity or that often. And so that fuel's not right for our body. It's kind of like if you've got a car that runs on diesel and you put unleaded in it, doesn't really
Doesn't
work.
work.
That's exactly right. So people can get confused between looking at what someone else does, who they may like to function like or look like, and fuel the same way. So one of the things I've learned over the last 27 years in helping teach people how to change the way they look, feel, and function is that there's three broad categories, if you like. There's eating like an athlete. So if you're an athlete, you need to eat like X. There's eating for weight loss. So if weight loss is your primary goal and or maintenance of weight, there's eating that way. Or there's what we call healthy eating, which is making sure that you're getting a broad range of food groups, etc. So, if you're working in a busy role in real estate, real estate people, to me, they're always so well presented. I live in an apartment block, and just last weekend there was an apartment for show, and, the young guy there, he'd be old, I'm old enough to be his mother, but he's so well presented, he's so well groomed, and he smells good and all of those things. But I'm just wondering what the insides of him look like. And it's kind of like that duck that's sitting on the lake and they're majestically swimming around, but underneath they're going like that.
So true.
So, one of the main differences between eating for sports performance and eating healthily or for weight loss is that our bodies have different tolerances to carbohydrate. So, for example, even if you and I followed Jess Fox's diet, we'd probably put on weight because we don't have as much tolerance to carbohydrate as she does. One, because we're a little bit older than her, and two, because I'm postmenopausal, and so my tolerance has decreased. And unfortunately, as we age, our tolerance to carbohydrate decreases, either man or woman.
Yep.
And even for people who get frustrated that they're either not losing weight or maintaining an ideal weight, if they eat, they can be eating healthily, but their body weight can increase because they're still exceeding their body's tolerance to carbohydrate.
Right. So there's a tolerance factor then.
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
And so, for example, fruits like mango, kiwi fruit, grapes, they have a high carbohydrate value.
Right. Okay.
Very similar, like a handful of grapes has got similar carb content to half a cup of pasta, half a cup of rice, or one slice of bread.
Wow.
Or what I call those foods white death foods, right?
Yeah.
And so
True.
your body doesn't know whether you've had the cup of pasta or the rice or the quinoa salad or all the good things really that's in the mango, the grapes, or the pineapple or the banana.
Right.
And so it just takes it in as carbohydrate and it converts it to glucose. And you've got this big dump of glucose. And if you're not active, it's going to sit there and your blood sugars go to spike. And then you're going to have this big crash. So if you're someone who eats, lots of fruit in the morning for breakfast, you're probably going to have a glucose spike within half an hour after that. And then you're going to have a crash. And so at morning tea, you're going to want more and you're going to continue on this big roller coaster. Whereas if we prioritize protein throughout the day, our blood sugar is much more steady.
Right. Gotcha.
So for professionals in real estate who are working long days, if they start their day with a high protein breakfast, So that could be, 2 eggs, one piece of bacon, or the other way around. They're going to feel much fuller for longer. Their energy is going to be much more consistent, and they're not going to feel like they need that mid-morning snack. So that's a great way for them to start their day and fuel their day.
Got it. So where is this? Like, I remember growing up, the good old food pyramid and, all that aspects of getting into that, I guess, headspace. And even when I was going through uni back in the days, it was a very similar concept. There wasn't much talk about protein as such a major player in this, and making sure your carbs are up there, and obviously good carbs. But where is this changed in this language and this understanding, and because it is so super important, particularly I see it for longevity as well, based on what you're saying.
Yeah, a good question. Look, protein used to be something that was talked about hand in hand with bodybuilders.
Yeah.
And that, if we ate lots of protein, we'd get big. And I think, too, a lot of women shied away from that for that reason, because they didn't want to become muscular. So, all the research now shows us that if we're a sedentary type person and we don't do much activity, we need around about 1 gram of protein per kilo of body weight.
Per day.
So, yeah, per day. So let's say that you were 70 kilos, you'd need around
Give or
70
take, give or take 10 or so.
Yeah, well, you're the host.
You're so kind.
So let's say you needed 70 grams of protein in a day. Now,
Right.
3 eggs at breakfast is going to get you 18 grams of that.
Gotcha.
100 grams of chicken at lunchtime is going to get you about 27 grams of that. And, another 100 grams of, say, I fillet in the evening is going to get you another 27 grams. So, you haven't quite got,
Yeah.
you've just got your allowance. Whereas if you're active and, you work out and look after yourself, you really need about 1.5, give or take a bit, grams of protein per kilo of body weight per day.
Wow.
So
And
you'd go from 70 up to around 120. So that's a lot of protein to eat. And a lot of people make the mistake too by thinking, well, I've had 100 grams of chicken. That's
yeah,
100 grams of protein. It's not.
got it. Got it.
So, protein will keep us full as well. As we age, it's also going to help in the maintenance of muscle mass.
Right.
And if, anyone who's listening out there knows anyone who's in a nursing home and they've been to visit at mealtime,
Yeah.
breakfast is high in carbs.
Yeah.
It's cereal and cold toast
Yeah.
or
So
some
true.
fruit. Lunch is sandwiches or a bowl of soup and a roll often. And dinner is maybe a casserole or a stew with a few little bits of protein. And, when people are in a nursing home, you're probably thinking, well, why would they need protein? They're not lifting weights, but they need it in the maintenance of muscle mass. It also helps with their immune function. And they're likely only getting 30% of their daily protein requirements. And they feel hungry. So, of course, they've got to have morning tea and afternoon tea and a cup of tea and a biscuit and all of those things. And, we know that one of the challenges is if we fall over 65 and we break something, within 1 year of that happening, 33% of people pass away.
Wow. Really?
So lack of protein can lead to frailty, is the nutshell. So
Oh,
when you
man.
go and visit your grandparents in a nursing home or your
Bring it, bring
parents,
a slight protein shake.
exactly, or so at least some beef jerky or some salami. Don't take a cake.
I love it. Now, what about the difference between men and women in relations to those protein levels? Is it still the one gram
It's
per kilo?
only a little, and there's not really much difference. It's
But that's
the
the
difference is mostly in the activity level.
got it. Okay. So,
If you're someone who, a bodybuilder, for example, might want to go up to 1.8 to 2 grams per kilo of body weight per
yeah.
day.
Okay.
But, if you just think about what you ate yesterday, if you're listening in, and just roughly work out when you started to have protein, because most people have very little at breakfast,
Yeah.
very little at lunch, and then it's in the afternoon, but you can't catch up. And that you mentioned about having a protein shake. Well, it's a bit hard sometimes to eat that much protein. So,
Yeah.
a good protein shake will give you around 15 to 20 grams of protein as a morning tea snack or as an afternoon snack.
Got it.
Obviously we use that with our weight loss clients at DietFlex, but it doesn't have to be about weight loss. It can just be about making sure that you get the protein. And look, if you're busy and you've got to be out the door early, having a protein shake in the morning with some avocado or something else in it, some berries which are low carbohydrate,
Yep.
and a bit of high protein yogurt in there, that can be a great meal on the go. Much better
Fantastic.
than going through the drive-through and having the McMuffin.
Yeah. Which I was going to say, right? I was going to say, are there any proteins that we should like be avoiding altogether?
Well, a good example of that would be protein powder or
Yep.
protein bars. Like, you can go to the supermarket and it's full of things that say high protein, but it's very clever marketing, and it's really blindsiding us, uh, because we just look at that high protein, or what it really means is it's just higher protein.
Right. Okay.
So, if you're looking for a bar, for example, that's high in protein, you want to try and make sure that it's got at least 10 grams of protein in it.
Yep.
But at the same time, you don't want to be grabbing 20 grams of carbs in it.
Yes, that's true. Because then it's completely out of proportion, isn't it?
Yeah. And some of them have a lot of fat in them. So, become a food label detective and,
Yep.
and have a look at if it's a protein bar, it should be primarily protein.
Yeah, fantastic. And then what about like for then that so let's just protein will help with your energy, help with muscle, help with mobility. What else does the protein help us with throughout the day?
Helps us maintain our energy at a much more consistent rate.
Yep.
So, often if you've been out, you've showed open homes, or you've done inspections, or you've got a new listing, you come back, you've had lunch, and then it's sort of that 3 to 4 o'clock. If you've had a high carb lunch, the
Yep.
energy slump. So you're looking for the chocolate fundraising box, or
Yes.
or the
Those
life,
lollies.
or the leftover birthday cake from the morning tea, uh, for that sugar spike. And
Yeah.
so if you've had enough protein at lunchtime, you'll still feel full. Um,
Right.
and that together too with making sure that, you're hydrated.
Yep.
And because often people will look for that afternoon snack because they're thirsty, and they confuse thirst and hunger. And so if you're out in the car, going to listings or inspections, always make sure you've got that drink bottle in the car to maintain your hydration.
Fantastic. Some great advice there. Now, I'm a bit of a down the rabbit hole with the whole aging process at the moment, getting on in my lovely age and understanding the different things that help us and different things that hinder us. But talk to me about the concept of active aging. Hey guys, just a little side note here. How's it going? Are you on track this year? I know that sometimes this part of the year we can feel like we're in a bit of a grind, a bit of in the trenches. Are you on track from the original plans that you set out for the rest of this year? What I've realized is that between with this time of year, we get so distracted and we've got trying to chase so many shiny balls and go down so many rabbit holes. And that's why I created a program called the 90. It's a framework that actually allows you to achieve more in 90 days than ever before. Some of the feedback that we've got from some of the people that have used the process, the 90, is that they've achieved more in 90 days than the whole previous year. So if you'd like to have the tools, have the techniques, have the framework on the 90, so you and your team can achieve more in 90 days than ever before. What it does, it impacts you of how to get clear, what you need to do, and who you need to be to show up in order to achieve the things you want to achieve over the next 90 days. Simply head over to jamesshort.com.au, click on join the waitlist, fill in your details, and one of the team members will be in touch and take you through the 90 framework. On with the show.
Yeah. Well, often I speak to people and they say, well, Amanda, that's just part of being old, you
Mm.
know, that things slow down. And I say, well, yeah, they do. But, I said, I participate in masters athletics, right? And we run 3 or 4 times a week. We do weights, we recover, all of those things. But, unfortunately at 50 plus GST and some, me, uh, all we're doing is training to slow the slowdown rate down.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we're doing in life. Where it's not so much, who wants to be 90, but be sitting in a chair with a rug on you and a heat pack from 70 to 90. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily about getting to a chronological age. It's about a health, rather than a lifespan, it's more about a health span. So as we age, maintaining the quality of life and maintaining the functionality that we have, being able to get up and down off the floor with your grandkids, being
Yep.
able to take your grandkids to the beach, being able to get in and out of the car, being able to carry your own groceries, all those things. And, my parents are in their late 70s and 80s. And, mum doesn't have a great back, but I say, mum, don't give in to that, take 2 more trips to carry the groceries inside, because
Yeah.
that's some strength training.
So
So,
true.
so it's about um, fueling your body correctly,
Right.
and being as active as you can, and as in many ways as you can, and seeing movement as an opportunity, not as an inconvenience. And, sure, you might not be able to play tennis 3 times a week because you've got your knee replaced, but there's so many other things that you can do. And we know that if you don't use a muscle, within 72 hours, it gets atrophy or it gets smaller. So if you don't use it, you lose it. And,
Yeah.
strength training is one of the absolute keys to maintaining. If you can maintain your strength, you can maintain your independence. And, a lot of people say, Amanda, look, every time I go to the gym, the trainer gets me to do thousands of squats. Well, there's a reason for that, because you've got to get up out of the chair every day. You've got to get off the toilet seat. You've got to get out of bed. You've got to get in and out of the car. And those muscles that we use in the squatting movement are the muscles that we use for those activities. And the old adage, remember your fitness days, James? The better your butt, the better your back.
So true. So true. And I'm noticing for myself just the mobility. Like I'm pretty active anyway, but just, the tightness around the lower back and the hips. I do a lot of driving, and so being conscious of that, of opening up the hips, stretching the hip flexors and the glutes and the hamstrings, and just making sure that I have proper warm-ups before I hit the gym, because I know if I hit the gym cold, it's not going to respond too differently, too welcomely. So it's being, I guess, as you said, conscious and aware, and it's really going from that health span rather than that age span, because I think it's definitely so important. As we're an aging population, and the more we can actually help our parents and grandparents navigate this, I think it's going to be beneficial to all. That's for sure.
Yeah, just all the social benefits too that go with people who are
Yes.
retired, who, may go to like a forever active class or an exercise class for seniors. The coffee afterwards is just as important as the exercise. And if we can encourage our people of our age generation to encourage our parents to do that, whether it's swinging a golf club, going to lawn bowls, or doing a class for seniors. And, even if it's chair-based exercise, or if it's
Yep.
aqua aerobics, there's so many things that you can do. And I think sometimes if you've been very active in your 30s and 40s and 50s, you keep thinking, well, I can't do what I used to do when I'm 40, so I'm going to give up. And, from what you've just described, it sounds to me like, sometimes we just have to let go that, you used to bench press 80 kilos and now your shoulders don't like that. And so you have to be happy with doing 60 kilos. And, doing something is better than doing nothing.
So true.
A common question is, when's the best time for me to exercise? And I say, well, anytime.
Yep. Yep. So true. And I love the analogy, people used to say to me, what's the best exercise? I said, the one that you're going to do, just get out and move. It's so important. And if I laugh because I do CrossFit, 4 times a week. And, obviously seeing the young lads in there, with their, with their big chests and so forth, and doing their squats. And I was squatting the other day, and obviously not to that level. And I was just chuckling to myself and the trainer comes in and goes, "You all right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm just admiring the young bulls coming through, with and I'd leave it with them. It's the ability not to get sucked into that, oh, I've got to lift heavy. It's like, no, just listen into the own body and work with your parameters and knowing that you're doing what you need to be doing right now. So that's why I had a little chuckle. I can definitely appreciate that. That's for sure.
Cool. And there's, even if you can't get structured exercise in, like, some of the people who are listening, they might work school hours, they go and pick the kids up from school, and then they're playing taxi all afternoon, like if you're going and doing inspections in apartment blocks, take the stairs, don't take the
Yeah.
lift up and down.
Yeah.
Park further away, don't park in the visitors section. So you get another few hundred steps. And if you do that on a repeated basis, that all builds up.
So true. That's so true. Now talk to me about yo-yoing because we've heard it in the past, but where are the latest information about this yo-yo diet syndrome? What specifically is happening around that?
Well, the average person takes on 126 diets or health kicks in their life.
Stop it. What? That
Yes.
is crazy number.
Well, that could be from anything between, engaging in a paid weight loss program with coaching to saying, right, today's Monday. I'm starting. I'm going to
Dry
be good.
July.
Yeah, exactly. Dry
Yep.
July, all of those things. So it can be self or it can be with a buddy, like we're going to, run the Gold Coast Marathon, say next July. It's 1 year away. So we're going to focus on that and we're going to eat properly for that. So there's a lot of that. But it's like New Year's resolutions. Most people after 3 weeks have forgotten what their New Year's resolution is.
Yes, so true.
So because what we're really doing, as you know, is changing behavior.
Yeah.
And that could be a difficult thing. And there's lots of stages into behavior change. And if we're in pre-contemplation or contemplation stage and not in action phase, it's the same when people go to look at a house that's for sale. There's a lot of
Yes.
tire kickers out there. And so it's the same concept. So often people will choose something that's, and I'm sure your listeners will be familiar with setting SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and a time frame. So often people set totally unrealistic goals. I'm going to lose 20 kilos in 10 weeks.
Yeah.
If you've got 40 kilos to lose, maybe you can do that. But if you're working full time and you have a family and you're building your career, that's going to be a real challenge. So the best advice I could give people is choose something that one, you like, two, you've got to get some support, and three, something that's sustainable.
Great.
Because if you can't sustain either changes to your exercise program or what you eat for 90% of the rest of your life, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And so it's really important that you don't choose something that's fixed, quick fix, and promises fast results. Because the quicker the result, it's like anything. If it says it's going to make you lots of money, it's a scam.
But that's the bounce back, right? So and you hit the nail on the head. You haven't changed the behavior in able to adapt to the new whatever it is that you're looking to change because you want that quick instant gratification, those instant results. You actually haven't changed any the supporting behaviors and mindset attitudes behind it.
Yeah. And then what happens is you get this frustration. And then
Yes.
you accept this limiting belief that you put on yourself. um, I'm always going to be inactive. I'm never going to be able to wear the clothes I love. I'm always going to feel tired and lacking in energy and sluggish even after I've had 8 hours sleep.
Definitely.
And look, if the washing machine breaks down, you get someone in who's an expert to repair it. And I don't quite understand why people don't seek more help and guidance in the area of wellness or weight loss, particularly because it's such a challenging thing to do there's two steps with that. There's one, the weight loss, and two, the maintenance phase.
Yeah, definitely.
Because often people can, achieve their weight loss goal. They've lost their 15 kilos. They're wearing the clothes they love. They're feeling great about everything. And then they get some big stress in their life, whether it's, something to do with their relationships or someone in their family. And they revert right back to what they used to be because their habits aren't solid enough. It's kind of like people with back pain. They'll go to the physio, they'll do the exercises while they've got back pain. And as soon as the back pain goes, nope, don't need to see the physio anymore, not doing my exercises anymore. But it's
Cycle.
really like cleaning your teeth. You've
Yes.
got to clean your teeth every day, twice a day.
Yeah. So true. So true. Love it. And that's a really great explanation because I think, yeah, we tend to get those results and then go, oh, cool. Yeah, I've achieved it rather than looking at it. No, this is a lifelong thing, buddy. You got to keep it going. This is, you can go through the different stages. And as you said, now then move towards the maintenance phase. But what does that then look like once you've achieved those goals and how do you ensure that that keeps on moving in the right direction? Mm.
Yeah. And, it's like when, um, if you're selling real estate, you can tell by the language that the person who might buy the property, how serious they are and how keen they are. And it's very similar for me. Like if I was asking you about what you ate and drank yesterday, you might say, oh, I was being good yesterday or I was being bad. And you're associating emotion with behavior and food. And
Yes.
that's a real challenge. So we like to talk about you're either on plan or you're off plan because there's so much emotion tied up with how we fuel our body. And, one of the things I'll often say to people is if exercise didn't burn calories, would you do it? And some
Interesting.
people answer, no, I wouldn't. And so, often we use exercise as a punishment for being bad or off plan.
And so these beliefs then, obviously we form majority of our beliefs as youngsters. Is this also the beliefs that we have around food and exercise that are formed around that as well? Or do they develop as we get older?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't think there's any one answer for that. I
Mhm.
think, as a teenager, it depends who we are surrounded by and what kind of role models we have. Uh, you know, I love sport and fitness, obviously, because this is my career. But in my family, the biggest sporting achievement was my mother. She was the under 13 mixed badminton champion in southern Tasmania. And, my father was a smoker and an alcoholic until 20 years ago. And so I
Wow.
grew up in that environment. But I was fortunate enough to have other role models in my life that inspired me with this. But certainly as parents, the better role modeling we can advocate and show, the better, and the more chance our children have got of developing good habits. Whereas I remember as a child, my grandmother, if I fell over, she would soothe me with a lolly. And so that could condition me that when
Mm.
I feel pain, I comfort myself with food. And now even as an adult, if I go and visit my parents, my first thing is I'll go into the fridge and look what's in the fridge because that's what I used to do when I came home from school. And I may not even be hungry. So we have a lot of these behaviors that are entrenched. Like for example, every time someone goes out, it's a given. You have an alcoholic drink.
So
Whereas
true.
mostly if you eat home, you don't. So I think it's about being aware of what your behaviors are. And that's why working with a coach is a really good thing to do because they draw that awareness to you about specific things that you do when you get stressed or out of your comfort zone or maybe not even um, think about. Like I started with a new client this morning and I said to him, Ollie, have you got any challenges coming up this week socially? He goes, why are you asking me that? And I go, well, if you don't think through what's going to happen, He said, yeah, I'm going out with my mates and we're going to watch the football. And I said, well,
Mm.
what would you usually do? He said, oh, we'll have pie and chips and a few beers. And I said, well, how, you're 118 kilos and your goal's 95 and you've lost 1 kilo this week. How are we going to keep that going? How are you going to manage that socially? So being mindful is the first step there to change.
So true. And then, as you said, then having that plan for those events that, rather than just getting to that event and then in the event and then having the peer pressure and then go, oh, have the beers and the chips and the pies and go, oh, that's it. I'm done now. I'll start again next week, which is then that vicious cycle once again.
Yeah, that yo-yo. And, going back to what you said about parents, I used to be a school teacher about 3 decades ago. And when you're on duty and you're wandering around and you're seeing what's in the kids' lunch boxes, like that's where parents can have a really good impact in terms of what they put in the lunchbox. Or, some kids used to order lunch every day. Um, so
I remember growing up having, gosh, and in when I was playing high competitive sports, my mum gave me 6 bread rolls a day for lunch.
and then when you got home for afternoon tea,
I
you
was
probably
hungry
had half
again.
a packet of wheat bixes.
Yeah, that's right. But there was then banana and custard on top.
100%. So, we all grow up with these things, but it's about awareness, and that's why one of the things we get people to do is
Yeah,
is you call it the old-fashioned food diary, but to write down in their daily planner what they're having so they can actually see it.
definitely,
Uh, and
definitely.
then
That's
that's really important because when you count up certain things, maybe you don't realize that you're having the equivalent of 10 alcoholic glasses
and also the lack
a
of
week.
protein. I reckon probably so many people don't really understand the lack of protein that they're actually having compared to thinking, oh, well, I had protein at dinner. Well, what about the rest of the day? As you said
Mm.
before. So true. So true. So Amanda, what's coming up for you? You're getting some good, amazing keynote speaking opportunities. So that's obviously a focus for you at the moment. What else is on the horizon for you over the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, I've just come back from a 1 week, 1 month holiday overseas, so I'm getting my head back in the game. That was my
Beautiful.
reward for having a good year. Yeah, look, my keynote is blindsided because, as you know, I was born with only 5% sight in my left eye, and I was told from a really young age that I couldn't do a lot of things like play sport, drive a car, and read and write. But I end up with a license to drive a minibus that seats 28 people. You may not want to get in the bus with me, but that's okay. So, yeah, so I'm working on that and getting that message out there. Also, I've got 2 weight loss programs that I do. One is a 12-week program and one is a full body transformation that I'm working on. So whether someone's got 6 kilos to lose or 35, that we've got a program for everyone with that. And so they're the main two things at the moment. And there's a couple of corporate programs in the pipeline, 12-week face to face and online. So I'm excited about that because when you've been self-employed for about 30 years, you've got to keep reinventing yourself and have some fun. So,
Definitely.
and then my hobby is masters athletics. So I'm looking forward to competing in Brisbane in September at the Oceania Championships. And I also coach a squad of masters athletes that range in age from 39 up to 77. So that's
Wow.
fun too.
Gosh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So where can the audience go to find out more about these programs and what's coming up?
Yeah, they can go to my Facebook page, Diet Flex Tasmania, or if they're young and trendy, Instagram, Amanda Weight Loss Coach, or my LinkedIn page, Amanda Coombe.
Love it.
So
Fantastic. So
just
is there
just
any of those different areas? So good.
yeah, all of those different areas.
Great. And now, is there anything covered? Is there anything that we haven't covered that you think is important that we finish off with today?
I think one of the best messages in terms of your health and wellness is to really make sure that you do have some time for you because you can get busy with life. And if you want to have a haircut or you want to have a massage or get your nails done, you make time for that and you make an appointment. And I'd really encourage people to make an appointment with themselves just once a week, even if it's 20 minutes. It might be just to have a bath, it might be to go for a walk, it might be to actually sit down and eat lunch rather than eat lunch in the car between appointments. Because even if you're busy and you've got lots of responsibilities and you've got kids to care for and all of that, if you're not looking after yourself, you can't help and look after others. And a lot of women in particular are conditioned to look after others. I've worked a lot with nurses and teachers, and they find that really challenging because they perceive it selfish.
Mm.
But it's really important to have some time each week for yourself.
So true. So true. Amanda, always love having you on the show. Thank you so much for your expertise, your energy and your information. And once again, truly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, James. It's a pleasure.